Welcome to the fourth episode. Today we're sitting with someone really special that's going to do his own intro, which is an exception on this podcast because normally I do the intro, but he has worked with so many names, done the podcast for so many names that I'm going to ask him to introduce himself briefly.
Dude, well, thank you, first of all, for interviewing me in my own studio. I appreciate that. Welcome to the Move Miami. This is Miami's top podcast studio in the entire city. We've worked with incredible celebrities, Theo Vaughn, Sexy Red, Rick Ross, a number of the Heat players, UD, Mike Miller, Bam Adebayo. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. We've just had so many big celebrities here. And the best part about it is we have only been open for 6 months. And we're just getting started. We do have a number of guests who are coming through that I can't even talk about right now because I'm on a non-disclosure agreement until the episode drops. But it'll be really exciting to announce those once they come out.
That sounds great. It's a pretty remarkable story. We will talk about that a little bit later.
For sure, man.
Your website's really great, right? Because it has all those names on it. So when I looked it up, I just clicked on the website and I saw all the names, all the guys that did a podcast here. I'm like, okay, I just have to book that. So I think, number one in Miami right now, at least man. If we look at the guest list. And if we look at the atmosphere, it's also pretty amazing.
Thank you.
And for a little bit of a backstory, I came here to record it, and then I heard his awesome story. And I'm like, I need to interview him, ask him, how to do a good podcast setup, because everybody comes here, so it should be good. And what have you learned, kind of like the hidden, undercover secrets that you have seen, not just from one person, but from multiple people, so that people can learn how to make podcasts work for themselves. So this is a selfish episode where I also want to learn a lot. So let's get started with some technical stuff. 100K. That's how much you invested in this whole setup?
Yeah, this setup was just a hair over $100,000.
That's cool.
We've got a lot. I've got 4 Sony cameras in 4K. I've got 6 Shure microphones, a number of different attachments and accessories. Everything, all the mics are going into cloud lifters and they're going into Rodecaster Pro. It's a general setup for a podcaster. But what was really interesting about it was I actually hired a technician to come in and tweak my audio perfectly because I didn't want to take away from the concrete environment of the loft and fill it full of sound panels. So I was like, how could I keep this a very open layout without disrupting the beautiful rusticness of the loft? And so I paid him like $2,500 to come and tweak all the cables and tweak all the audio, technical aspects, different components, and we got it to sound like it sounds right now.
Yeah, and I guess also because you said something about the background noise, like, right, welcome to Miami, a bunch of background noise here, construction work, all that stuff.
You guys probably can't hear this, but there's literally construction happening outside. There's beeping of trucks that are backing up. There's a concrete production facility downstairs where they're just churning concrete all day, and then they're sending them out to the work sites because right outside here, we're in the heart of downtown Wynwood, which is the arts and entertainment district in Miami. This is like the hub of where everybody is. And there's dozens of cranes right outside.
Yeah. So that's enough about the sound, I guess.
Yeah.
Talk me through the rest of the setup. We have 2 screens here. I think that's pretty cool. I don't think we will be able to see them, but at least you can kind of see yourself, check yourself from multiple angles. What's the idea behind the 2 screens?
Yeah, so when I designed the set, this all happened over the course of the last 6 months. It didn't all happen at once, I started with 3 cameras, the cloud lifter, and that was basically it. And then I was like, you know what? I'd like to see what they're looking at so that I don't have to, or what I'm looking at, so I don't have to go from camera to camera. So I first installed a live switchboard, and then I connected it to one screen. And then I was like, man, it'd be cool if the clients were able to see themselves too. So then I got one TV, and then I was like, man, I want both people to see themselves. So I got 2 TVs without always looking in the middle. And so now there's a TV here, there's a TV there for you. I've got speaker clocks so that the speakers know exactly how long they're going, because as I went on, I realized some people talk for 3-4 hours and they think it's 30 minutes. They have no idea. There's no concept of time. The thing I love the most about podcasting, and what a lot of my guests have reiterated, is when you're here, we're talking one-on-one without the distraction of our cell phone.
Yeah. 100%.
How often in this day and age are we talking one-on-one with someone where we're not distracted by Instagram, text messages, phone calls, any number of distractions that are coming through this device? We're having a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love the most about podcasting. And so I love the ability to orchestrate that as an engineer and then also to have all of this set up, because it's not just about the TVs. The TVs are cool if you want to see themselves. It's like a wow factor, but they also serve a purpose because a lot of my big guests, they come in and they want to see a run of show. So the producers of these huge shows will come in and they'll be like, I want the guest to see the bullet points. I want them to know what questions are coming up next. And so I'm able to facilitate that where a lot of studios in the area don't have that.
Yeah, more on that later, because that's going to be the juicy part of the podcast. What are the secret techniques that people are using? But before that, you also have a pretty cool setup, just like looking at the light and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Did you do this yourself, or did you hire someone for this?
No, I built this all myself, man. I built this for me.
You are a man of many talents.
Yeah, thank you, man. And the craziest part is this is like not my full-time job. This is just a little passion project.
Yeah. What are you doing again?
I've been doing mortgages for 10 years.
Mortgages. Yeah.
So I'm a self-employed mortgage broker. I would say confidently that I'm one of the top mortgage brokers in the city. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. I work with a lot of self-employed individuals, people that, foreign nationals that come from another country that want to buy here in the United States, people who don't just show their income. You know, we've got all these dozens of programs, and that's really my specialty.
Yeah, that makes it,
But thank God for mortgages. I don't love it, right? I've been doing it for 10 years. I think a lot of people get stuck in the nuance of doing something that they perhaps hate even. You know, maybe they don't love it, maybe they hate it, and they're stuck doing it over and over again because they think there's nothing else that they can do. And that was me for the longest time. It was like my golden handcuffs. What else can I do that'll make $500,000 a year? I had no idea. So I was stuck doing something that I really didn't like, but thank God for it because it paid for all of this.
Yeah, I guess that's the last question about the technical setup. Like, how did you pay for all of this? But I guess with your normal income, pretty much. Yeah.
So I mean, my regular income went into buying the bulk of this, and then as I started renting it, which I never intended to do, as you heard the story. But I started renting it out to people, and I reinvested every dollar I made. So I've never taken a dollar out of the profits from this. I've always reinvested it back into new equipment, into the trusses, into the lighting, into the entire setup. It's all gone back in.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also kind of what you feel here. It's like, you just look at yourself, you're like, man, I wish my home looked like this. You know what I mean? It looked better than... But anyways, I think that's more enough about the technical setup, because most people will probably hire someone for that. But just to summarize, it's pretty cool to have the two screens, so you can actually see yourself, the clock for the time. Yesterday, we actually went over, and I also got lost. So I think the clock is
it's easy to do,
one.
man. It's easy. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking already, I'm like, I should put a clock right there behind you so that you can see what's going on. So
that's
fair. Like I said, every aspect of this place was built for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there's so much attention to detail in it. And I really think that's what's behind anything great, is that somebody actually cared enough to put the time into it. This isn't just like a lot of the studios in the city where they fail, is that they're just rented out like an Airbnb. People just want to make a quick profit, and they don't care about the fact that, you know, the cameras are shit, or that they're in low resolution. They don't care about the construction noise in the background because it's not theirs.
Yeah,
right?
Or they want you to bring a memory card. That's something that I saw when I wanted to book another studio before I found this one.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny. You feel the love, just like
man.
food with love. It's studio with love. All right, let's talk a little bit about your guests and what you have noticed just recording podcasts, because I think this is pretty unique, right? Most people have their own podcast studio.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows what's going on behind the scenes, but you actually do.
Yeah.
And from, like, I guess the biggest names in the education, online, marketing, business world. Yeah. So let's get started there. You mentioned bullet points. So are you telling me that not every podcast is spontaneous like this one?
It's not. No, man. So to circle back, I think in the last like 5.5 months, I've recorded, we were just doing the numbers yesterday because we were going through some of the SSDs, and I've recorded over 160 podcast episodes here. Nice. So I've seen over 160 podcasts. I've sat here and listened to them. One of the things I love the most about it is one of my mentors, he told me, imagine if you were to just take 6 months off of work, whatever you do for work. Imagine you just took 6 months off, and the only thing you did all day for 8 to 12 hours a day was just listen to podcasts from inspirational people, or just to read books of people that you looked up to. And he's like, imagine how further ahead you would be in your mindset. And it's so true, because every single aspect of my life has improved since I started this, because I've been here to witness all these incredible people. So I would say that's been the most impactful part of this entire experience has been the connections, the network, meeting all these incredible people and listening to them every day.
Yeah.
But what I can say is a lot of these, to get back to your question, are very, very prepared. A lot of them are very prepared. You know, Theo Vaughn was here and he was interviewing Sexy Red, who sat in that chair. He prepared like over 20 hours for that podcast. And most people would sit back and be like, 20 hours, that's crazy for Sexy Red. Like, who would do that? But this guy is so intelligent and he's so smart. And I know he plays kind of like the dummy, right? He plays like the, what's that guy's name? Joe Dirt, right? He kind of plays that role. But the guy is so intelligent. And it was interesting to me because I was talking to the team. He was running back and forth with people on like, how do you think this would sound? He was going through his script. There were some reels that went super viral that looked like they were spontaneous in the conversation, but they were completely prepared. He had prepared and scripted them beforehand, and he led her into the conversation into a reel that went viral. It was premeditated. And I'm like, the guy's a freaking genius. You know, to be able to orchestrate something at that level and then to have it go viral off of something that he had already premeditated and pre-thought about. And so that was very inspiring for me because, you know, I started this place, like I said, for my own podcast. And we used to just wing it. Dude, we would bring people in here and we would just sit here and just shoot the shit. And there was absolutely no flow. And I've seen a lot of guests do that. And a lot of them do very well. But I've noticed the ones that do the best are the ones that have been sat down, prepared. There's bullet points. They have some of them, like the OGs show, which is Mike Miller and UD. Those are the guys from the Heat. They come in here every other week. And their producer will have an entire PowerPoint slide put together that I throw on the TV, and they're watching it and they're looking at what's coming next. They're looking at what questions to ask. They're looking at videos on YouTube, you know, and they're enjoying that experience with their clients.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, with their guests.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember you saying a little bit more about that. Before we go there, it's like, I don't know who told me this, but it's like nowadays you have to think about a podcast, which I'm not doing yet because this is my 4th episode. Like, also like, how am I going to get the views, right? Which is most of the time with short form content.
Yeah.
Or like shorter form content to get the views. So then it totally makes sense to structure it out and like actually prepare it. But I think you told me something funny yesterday, it was yesterday, where they were like literally watching memes or something on the screen, and then they could also edit it in the Instagram reel and all that kind of stuff.
Of course. So like, for instance, let's say that you're a ball player and I remembered a pretty cool moment of something that happened, or let's say that you and I are friends, or we go back and I remember a certain time that something that you did went viral. I could throw it up on the screen because I am usually back there as the engineer, and I'm like, oh, let me look this up on YouTube or on Twitter, on whatever, and I'll find the clip, I'll play it on the screen, and I'll be like, dude, you remember this time? And I'll show them the clip, or whoever the host is, and they're like, oh shit, I forgot about that. That's crazy. And so they're laughing about something that they're seeing here. But then in post, in editing, they'll take that exact same clip that we screen recorded and they'll throw that back into the edit. Yeah. So when you're watching it as the consumer of the content, you're able to see exactly what they're seeing and you feel like you're here in the room with us. Yeah. And I think out of every podcast I've shot here, the one that's shot with the OGs, with Mike Miller and UD, is my favorite. First of all, disclaimer, I don't know anything about basketball. I've never been a sports guy. But I've got all these NBA legends in here. And when they're here talking and they're like shooting the shit, it doesn't matter if you're a sports fan or not. It feels like you're in the room with them. Yeah. Right? And so that's the part that I love, is that if you can make someone feel like they're here with you on the couch and you're just two boys hanging out, like forget the cameras, forget the gear, forget $100,000 worth of shit. You guys are just here talking, you know, and that's what consumers want to feel, is that they're a part of that conversation. Yeah. Yeah. It's emotions, right? It's stories. It's fun. That's what I think is really interesting nowadays, that more and more people start podcasting, and let's be honest, not everybody has some kind of crazy story or like, you know, has crazy expertise about, let's say, Andrew Huberman, who's like studied and done all this stuff. Like, not everybody has that expertise, right? He's still funny, right? But he really knows what to talk about. But if you don't have that, you can still be super entertaining, and it's kind of like, you know, take over. I think it's the stories. The stories are what do it. Everything's about story selling or storytelling. If you think about all of our history throughout the generations and generations, the bulk of it was passed down through stories. Yeah. Right. And that it is the easiest way for you to be able to tell somebody something and keep them entertained and captivated.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you stories about the time when we've had, you know, like Rick Ross here. That was crazy. That was an incredible experience. I mean, when this guy came in, first of all, this guy is so smooth. Rick Ross comes in and he's got his girl on his arm, and like everybody in the hallway is like, "Holy shit, is that Rick Ross? Like, what is he doing in the building?" And everyone is like, "Yo, Rose," and he's so smooth. He's just walking in the hall, and he's like, "What's up, beautiful? How you doing? What's up, bro?" Like, you know, he's very, very cool. Yeah. And then he comes up the stairs. He comes in. He's got his little entourage with him, and they come with all of his cool. You know, all of his stuff, his bottles of champagne and his chips and all of his different products, and they put them all out here, and we arrange them and make them all look nice, because when he comes, he understands business, and he understands that everything is about pushing products. So if this podcast were to get, let's call it 1 million views, why would he not want 1 million people to see his champagne bottle?
Yeah.
Right? Even if only 1% of those people buy, you just sold a shitload of champagne.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's just, I love the nuances of business behind it, because at the end of the day, as a businessman, I'd love to see that stuff.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I didn't even think about that, right? That normally you had to like negotiate with like all the big movie producers where you could put the Coca-Cola in and all that kind of stuff. And now you can just do it yourself.
Now you can do it yourself.
That's pretty cool. Did you have other podcast guests that used their podcast to push a product, and what kind of products were they pushing?
For sure. Yeah, a lot of my guests are locally sponsored by Celsius. Mm-hmm. So if you'll notice, even when you came in, I need a Celsius, it's because we have a shitload of Celsius in the fridge. Yeah. Celsius will come and they'll drop off a bunch of cans because we're out here handing them out to the guests. Yeah. And so, you know, that's just like a very small affiliate partnership, so to speak. But there's other guests that'll come in here and they're sponsored by a big name. A recent guest, he had a sponsor, which I can't say the name of, but they paid him $20,000 in order to put their product.
Was it a drink?
Right here. It was a drink.
Okay, cool.
20 grand. Just
alcoholic or not alcoholic?
Not alcoholic.
All right, interesting. Yeah.
Just 20 grand.
Sit there and talk.
Easy. You know?
That's great. Yeah.
And so I'm like, dude, this guy just made 20 grand to come and sit in the studio and talk shit for an hour. How crazy is that?
Yeah. This is why I'm saying you should raise your prices. You know. It's
man.
20K. So, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start seeing that more and more and more. Yeah. And I'm pretty hyped about like your location and situation, because you're pretty much gonna, you know, beat down TV and just, you know, do everything here. So.
Well, the thing that I'm noticing about podcasts is it's taking over the modern, like it is the modern takeover of what digital media used to be on the air. So like the newscasters and all of these different, what are they always pushing? Big pharma is like 90% of it. They're pushing pills, they're pushing cars, they're pushing all types of stuff. Yeah. But now people are going to look to the micro influencers to push their product, because there's a Perrier right here. So, you know, they're not sponsoring us. Full disclaimer. You're more than welcome to sponsor us if you'd like to. But they're not, right? And they easily could be. And what is it? People are gonna, let's say that this episode took off and a couple 100,000 people happened to see it. They're now all going to see us drinking Perrier. Yeah. They're going to immediately think, oh, I want a Perrier. Yeah. It might not be now. It might be in a couple hours when they're on the road or they just left the gym, but it's going to cross their mind. And I think a lot of the advertisers, they've always known this, but I've seen viewership is going down in big news channels. Yeah, I recently did a job listing on Indeed because I need a sound engineer and a video engineer to take over this, because I can't be here 12 hours a day. We're booked all day. Yeah. You know, and like I still have a business to run. So I need somebody to take over that role. I've had 3 people apply from the local news channel. I had somebody apply from Telemundo. So it's like, what's happening? They all want to be a part of the space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually another point that just came up that I wanted to bring up. What I'm really curious about is like whether all the talent is kind of going to flock away into podcasting. Because just an example, I watched the new Aquaman in the cinema, right? That's a thing in the US, Aquaman.
Aquaman?
The new Aquaman.
Oh, Aquaman. Sorry,
Aquaman. Yeah.
No, you're good.
My accent here. Anyways,
like,
the new Aquaman. I watched it, and I just felt that the storytelling was not that strong. And I've had that feeling for a while now. So I'm like, is everybody just quitting like Hollywood, and are they all just like working for TO and just producing good questions for podcast? So I think if this develops like this might mean literally that, you know, the also it's more fun, right? Like if you're like producing a movie for Hollywood, I guess there's like all these rules, all these like old people that are telling you what to do, and then you come to a podcast and you can pretty much do whatever you want. Yeah. So I think first of all we have way more talent going into it because there's no. I mean, you can just sit here and do it, right? You can do even a little bit of a setup at home, and that's a lot easier to do than actually get in Hollywood.
That's true.
And also if the money is there, right? If let's say the brand starts seeing, like most brands, if they sponsor you, they do like some kind of affiliate link or like some click tracking, so they know. And if they start seeing, hey, damn, like we're making more money on a podcast than, I mean, you cannot track that in the cinema, of course, but on a podcast you can, right? So it's relatively easy to start investing more and more money because you're like, oh, we paid him 20K, but we made 200K. I mean, and they don't even care about the initial return, right? Because they just want to build a brand. So then it's like, okay, let's spend 200K, and then maybe they make 300K, and then that budget and also that talent might flock towards doing podcast or
it's true,
at least producing videos themselves instead of.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm seeing from my end is there's a huge distrust for big media right now.
Yeah.
Big conglomerate media. There's a big distrust, and a lot of that came as a result of COVID. The last time I watched the news was during COVID. We were locked down. I was living in Brickell, and I'm sitting in my apartment, and I'm like depressed. Now, first of all, obviously, I haven't seen anybody in weeks.
Yeah.
But I remember watching the news and being like, this is like super depressing. And I made a commitment that I wasn't going to watch it anymore. And so I turned it off, and I haven't watched the news since. So where do I go for my news? Well, I typically will either go to social media and I'll see it on social media, or I'll go to YouTube and I'll check things out. Or because we're in a bubble in Miami, most of us don't even see what the hell's going on in the rest of the country, to be completely honest. Right?
That's good.
We're just in a bubble here.
Yeah.
So if it's not relevant, we typically are uninformed. Or if it's not market related and you're investing and you're like trying to stay up to date with trends. But actually watching big media is becoming out of date. The baby boomers really used to watch. My dad, he still will come home every night and he'll watch the news at 6 p.m. Like that's his thing. But we don't do that anymore. And so what people are doing in order to find relevant information is they're looking for things that are specific to them that they care about. So if somebody cares about how to build a podcast studio, how to get incredible guests, how to bring those guests on, like what are some of the lessons that they've learned from that, they're probably going to listen to this episode, right? Because they're like, damn, that's really appealing. I want to hear more about that because they have an interest in it. But if they're interested in something else or this doesn't appeal to them, they're not going to find this. And they're not going to care about it even if they did, right? So every single podcast is done by someone different, and it's typically about a different topic. And so you're going to gravitate to that individual. And once you find something that's on track, you're going to be like, oh, that's my guy. Like, I love listening to his podcast because it's very relevant. There's some people that I listen to just because it's very relevant real estate news.
Yeah.
I listen to it because it's relevant for Miami. It's relevant. It's in the Miami real estate market. That's a market that I'm a part of. So I want to listen to that, right? And so that's where I get my information.
Yeah, and another cool thing, you just literally mentioned this trust. Mm-hmm. Because I was reading this post, I think it was on Billionaire Instagram page yesterday, that Kylie Jenner was doing something with Balenciaga, right? And like all the comments were like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna say it out loud because I don't want to. Everybody knows Balenciaga was like a thing. And then there was a post. I don't even know if that post was true and if Kylie Jenner really works with Balenciaga or if it was one of the other sisters.
And she was getting roasted?
And she was getting roasted. Oh, you have children yourself. What are you doing? Man. All that kind of stuff. So I also feel that like this whole trust thing is becoming more and more important, right? Because people got scammed by NFTs, by crypto. I mean, even like, the whole investment pyramid schemes and all that kind of stuff. So it's really easy to just watch a few podcasts and to see, hey, is this person not doing anything weird? Or like, hey, are you, embracing brands that are kind of weird? We're not gonna go in there. But so that trust thing is, I guess this is the easiest way to do it.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, but I really want to press on that thought.
Let's go.
Because I had someone this morning, it was another Heat player, and his agent was here with him, and his agent was on the podcast, and he said, the short form media is how people find you.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the long form media, that's how they trust you.
Yeah.
So you're gonna find somebody most likely because one of their shorts went viral. It may not have even gone viral because of anything meaningful that they say. It may have gone viral because they had a trending audio, or it may have gone viral because it just caught the algorithm somehow, or a hashtag or whatever, it landed on the explore page. But you're gonna see them that way, but you don't know anything about this person. When you go listen to their long form content, such as this, or such as them going into depth into their story about how they got started doing XYZ, whatever they're doing, that's when you really learn to relate with that person and you know them and you understand them and you're like, you know what, I trust that person. So if that person that you trust starts pushing the brand, now all of a sudden you trust it.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. I mean, that's why I like Under Armour, just because of David Goggins, you know? That's, but 100%.
So that's huge. And advertisers are understanding this, and that's why they're moving into this space.
Yeah.
Because they're like, if this guy has 100,000 subscribers and people are religiously listening to him, we look at the analytics and we see that, you know, his watch time is substantial. People are staying engaged in his content. The comments are there. The shares are there. Like, that's someone that we want to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like in my space, like the info online course space, I hear it a lot from the sales teams, like, hey, oh yeah, the best leads are the one that listen to a podcast. The best leads are the one that like watch the YouTube video, which is kind of, you know, in between, almost a podcast or a half podcast. But what I want to actually ask you, because you're kind of into real estate stuff as well, is like, how is that in the real estate space? Like, do you see people doing podcasts there? What does it do for business, or is that still like a little?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. You know what I've noticed? A good friend of mine, and this is a little off topic from the real estate part, but I'll bring it back. A good friend of mine, he's really deep in the podcast game right now.
Yeah.
And he's only been filming here for, I don't know, 5 months, and the guy's got like 150,000 subs.
Nice. Impressive.
My other friend, he's been doing podcasts for 2 years, and the guy has like 2,000 subs. I think he just broke 3,000, right? Mm-hmm. So what differentiates them? Well, the first one, he's talking about a specific, the guy that just got a couple thousand, he talks about a specific niche, a very, very tight niche, right? Let's call it trading.
Yeah.
You're only going to pick up an audience that is interested in trading, right?
Yeah.
If I were to just come on here and create a podcast about real estate, it's a very specific niche. I'm probably not going to get that many subs. I might get 1,000 subs. I may get 2,000 at most, right? Especially if I'm talking about Miami real estate.
Local,
I might get 500 at best, right? But what's going to happen is those 500, they're going to trust the shit out of me because those people are really, really interested. So at that point in time, if you're really going down into the niche, it doesn't matter if you have 500 subs or you have 500,000 subs, because the ones that you have, they're loyal and they trust you. Right. And if they are a buyer, now who's to say that they're a buyer? They might be a realtor or they might be whatever. But if you can find a way to pitch them something and you have a call to action, they're more likely to buy. They're probably 60% more likely to buy. Whereas if my other friend, this guy's taking off, by the way, he started doing all of his podcasts in Spanish.
Oh, yeah, that's
right?
smart. Yeah.
His went crazy. This guy's been interviewing a ton of influencers and he's interviewing them from various niches, But so what he does is he will go after people that have a huge audience and he'll bring them onto his podcast and then he'll talk to them. And obviously it goes viral because that person is going viral. So he'll piggyback on that. Brilliant strategy. He'll take off. And then what he does is he then, towards different parts of it, he starts pitching what he does. Right. And so in the process of doing that, he now uses it as a segue to offer to his clients, hey, if you work with me, I'll give you a feature on my podcast. Look at the last podcast that got 200,000 views. You know, let's say you got 10% of that, you're still killing it. Right. So it's like he can leverage that now because it's become an asset. And so there's very many different ways of doing this, man. There's so many different avenues. And I think it just comes down to if you've got a specific purpose, if you have a specific interest, if you have a specific niche, or if you have anything in particular that you care about, there's one route, which is you go do that and you really focus on that. And then the other one is you just figure out the algorithm, you crack it, and then you sell your product.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also cool what you just said, like all the collaborations right now with the new feature on Instagram where you can do collaboration and it also shows up on the other news feed. I think that's going to be pretty big, at least for now, because it just got released. So Instagram is going to probably push it.
Yeah, it's huge.
But,
and you as a creator, what I've seen a lot of the guests that really take off to is don't just create reels for yourself, but create reels for the individual. It's going to cost you a little bit more up front. But when you create that value for them, they're going to collab with you.
Exactly.
They're going to post it, and they're going to feel like, wow, this guy like took the time to not only film with me, but then he posted it, then he edited it, and now he's having it collabed, you know?
Yeah, I'm making you look good. That's, I guess,
correct.
The most
important.
important
If you can make someone look good. And that's why a lot of guys, they'll bring their people here, is because they're like, I want the video in 4K. I don't want to go down the street where it's in like freaking 720. It's not even 1080p, you know? That's another component of it.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, by now you have talked about how to, prepare a little bit and a secret hack to, use GIFs and little YouTube videos in your podcast so that you can make better reels. So I think those are already some quite practical things that most people don't really think about. And I mean, the 20 hours of research most people are probably not going to do. But there's also another side to the podcast, and that's getting guests. Have you seen anything happening there that might be interesting for the viewers / people that are watching this video on how the people that are doing the podcast are inviting people, or are they like doing gifts? Like, what do you see like around the podcast when they're not recording?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Maybe there's nothing. I don't know.
I think it's different for everyone, and it really depends on their audience. Like, I could give you some really, really valuable tactics right now, right? But if you live in like Oklahoma or in the middle of Kentucky, like that's not going to work for you. So what does work? Let me try to give you some advice that could be a little bit more broader that would help the audience. Because like if you live in Miami, it's very easy. Let's start there. Like, what do people in Miami do?
Yeah.
So if you're local, if you come here, you're going to meet somebody. You just met two badass guests just walking out of here because you're walking and passing, right? Yeah. I didn't even know who they were. They just booked here. And you're like, do you know who that guy is? I'm like, bro, I had no idea. So if you're booking at number one, I would say book at a really good studio that has the type of names that you want to be surrounded with, right? Like one of the things, I took your advice last night. One of the things that I'm going to be doing is hosting networking events where I can have all these high level guests come together and they can network with each other. Because I just had a guest today. He was like, hey, I saw that you were with so-and-so yesterday. Could you get her on my podcast? And I'm like, yeah, she's coming over in 2 hours. She is. She'll be here when you and I are done. Yeah. And I'm going to ask her, hey, would you be interested in being featured on my buddy's podcast? He's number 10 in the country right now for business podcasts.
Nice.
So, my suggestion has always been like, if you can build the connection, you can build the network, and you can be in proximity. That's the way you need to go. Proximity is power, right? Now, if you're someone who's in a smaller city, you're in the suburbs, you don't have access to like A-list celebrities and big players like that, I would start small, man. I would start with outreach. These people get reached out to all the time. Mm-hmm. So you have to write something compelling, and you have to know who to go to. Like if I wanted to get Shaq, for instance, I could get Shaq in here, but I wouldn't DM Shaq. You think he's going to respond to me? No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to DM the producer of the OG show, and I'm going to ask him, or I'll text him rather. Yep. If I didn't know any of them, I would find somebody that's on the show that you can easily do this. This is a hack. Go to one of the recent posts and go to all the comments, right? And look at some of the recent comments from the last 10 IG Reels or the last 5 IG Reels. If you see someone consistently commenting over and over again, it's probably someone who manages the page.
Interesting.
Right? Because whenever you post,
push engagement.
They're trying to push the engagement. So I would go on there first and I would look at, all right, I've seen this person. I don't know who she is, but she says she's a TV producer on her bio, and she's been commenting on every single last one of these 10 posts. And she's like the first to comment, right? So I'm going to DM her and be like, hey, do you have any affiliation with this show? If so, I would really be interested in bringing so-and-so on. This is what I have to bring to the table. Yeah. Right? If you have nothing to bring to the table because you're a brand new podcast, then you're just going to have to say like, look, I'm a brand new podcast. I have nothing to bring to the table, but this is really what I'm trying to push. And now you got to push what your purpose is. So if your purpose is I want to impact the lives of young men and women for XYZ reason, you're going to have to push that narrative because that's the only way you're going to get somebody in the door at first. Yeah. But if you have a substantial following or something, that's a much easier pitch because everybody wants exposure. So that would be the route that I suggest is you don't go to the person directly, you go to their producer. If you can't get a hold of the producer, you go to someone who knows the producer. And then you could even put out, I saw this recently, one of my guests, he put out a story on Instagram and he said, if you can get me a feature with so-and-so, I will pay you $250 cash. Just connect me with somebody that knows this person. That's cool. So he got the person, and they're coming in next month. They already booked.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I kind of do the same a little bit with getting clients. Like if I have a client, I check their Instagram profile and I see who they follow. And I'm like, oh, if that's a good client, I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm working with this person. Can work together. But yeah, proximity, I guess, is the biggest one. That's also why we are here. I'm like, oh, we talked for 5 minutes. And I mean, I didn't ask you after 5 minutes, but we had like a conversation in total of like 10 to 15 minutes, I guess, about your story. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. We need to do a podcast together. So that only happens in proximity. So that is...
No, proximity is power, man. I'm telling you, like your whole life can change with one connection.
Yeah.
One connection is all it takes.
It's crazy.
You know, when I started the studio, and I guess I'll shift gears a little bit, but when I started the studio, I did so because I built it for me. Like I mentioned, I built this for myself.
Yeah.
In the short period of time that I've had this, I never intended on renting this, and we can get into that at another
No, we can.
time,
I mean,
if
it's kind of
anything,
time
but,
to switch to your story.
Yeah,
anyways.
so I never intended to rent it. It was just for me. But
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I started getting some pretty cool guests, and it was really all about impact. And I was like, man, how can I create impact for the audience? I was a little frustrated at first because I started posting videos. Number one, I bought all the equipment, first of all. The initial investment was like 15 grand.
Yeah.
And I bought a couple cameras, I bought the audio, I bought some microphones, right? And so I started recording, and funny enough, the first guest I ever had on my podcast was a former NFL player. Mm-hmm. Just because, again, proximity, I met him at the gym, and I was like, the dude's like 7 foot tall, and I'm like, bro, he played NBA too, and cool. NBA and NFL, and I'm like, hey bro, would you be on my podcast? You know, and he was like, yeah, what's it about? And I was like, it's about men's mental health, and I want to create an impact for men. And I think like I heard a little bit about your story once, and I think that like if anybody heard this, they would really relate. And he was just like, yo, say less, I'm on there. Right?
Yeah,
and so I got him, and he comes in, and that's how I got the first guest.
That's cool.
It was because I told him my purpose. My purpose was I want to impact men. And so he comes in, and dude, it was the worst episode. First of all, I'll tell you why. His part, he was brilliant. He was so good. Every single thing he said was like gems. I'm like, dude, I'm going to get hundreds of reels out of this. This is like the best way to start this podcast.
Yeah.
And bro, I'm telling you, that camera overheated. That camera overheated. That battery died. I go to the audio. His microphone wasn't on for 15 minutes. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
So I'm so upset because I'm like, dude, oh my God, I got this one up and running. I got his cam up and running. His cam for the second part of it was out of focus. And then my cam was focused on my knee and not my face. So my knee is like super in focus. I'm sitting like this and my face is completely distorted. And I was just like, bro, this is horrible. Like this is going to be the worst podcast ever. And I was so upset because the information, it was so good, but like the execution was terrible. And so to go from that to just like what we have now is crazy, right?
Yeah.
But every single thing in here was built by trial and error.
But did you still post it, by the way?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I slept on this video. I did not post it for 3 months.
Woo.
Because I was just like, I'm such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
That I was like, I can't post this. It's so bad. The shit's out of focus. The guy's audio comes in and out. Like, I have backup mics on each mic now for a reason. And it was because of that first episode. I always have backup mics. And so I'm like, dude, I sent it to 3 different editors. I paid $2,000 to try to fix this video, and it was unfixable.
No AI can fix that.
Nobody. So everybody was like, dude, just post it. So I posted it, and it like didn't get a lot of engagement. And I was really upset because I spent all the time worrying about it.
Yeah.
I spent $2,000 trying to fix it. I got it uploaded, and it like did a nosedive, right? But it was my first episode, whatever. I do a couple more. At this point, I'm paying somebody. I'm paying for a copywriter so that they could do my copy. Because like to sit there and listen to your whole podcast afterwards and pick out which ones are good reels and to timestamp everything and like, bro, I don't have time for that shit. I'm so sorry. So I was paying somebody to do that. And then I was paying somebody to make the thumbnail. I was paying somebody to do like the YouTube SEO, whatever, and write the caption. And then I was paying somebody to edit the long form. And then I was paying a different person to, after she scrubbed the timestamps, to edit all the shorts. So I've got like 5 people that I'm paying, and it came, and then I had the social media manager too, who was going to post everything for me. Cause I'm like, dude, I can't do all this. I'm so busy. And so by the time it was all said and done, I'm paying $4,200 a month to have this happen. And I was just like, how long is it going to take me to grow this channel? Is it going to be 2 years? Is it going to be 3 years? I'm looking at my buddy, and like, he's been doing at this shit for years, and he's got 1,000 subs. And then what's the end goal? Am I going to make money, or is it just to impact people? Right. And I was just like, this is a huge investment. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to rent out the chairs. I'm just going to rent it out, see what happens. And so I told a couple people, I posted on Instagram, hey, I'm officially renting out my studio. It's available for rent. And so like 2 days later, my buddy calls me. He's a videographer, and he's like, yo, I got this really, really, really big guest, bro. You won't even believe it. It's Cody, Sperber, and Wes Watson, and they want to come rent your studio. And I was like, bro, who the hell is that? I don't know any of those people. Right.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
do you trust them? Are they trustworthy? Like, can I trust them in my place? And he was like, no, I'm telling you, these are the guys, bro. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll rent it for like, I don't know, $100. Right. And then I was like, it's fine. I'll let them in for free. They can come use the space.
Yeah.
And so they come in, they film their episode. It was insane. It was the best episode. At the time, it was the best. Like I was in the presence of people who were on such another level that I was just like, holy shit, like this guy lives in a mansion on the Venetian. He has freaking 17 exotic cars. The other one is a multi-million-dollar producing real estate investor with over 300 properties. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, dude, I'm in an atmosphere of greatness.
Yeah.
How is this possible? This is crazy. And then afterwards, I was afraid to charge them because I was like, bro, guys, this is free. Like, it's on the house. This was so inspiring. And they were just like, no, like, what are you, an idiot? Like, we need to pay you. We used the service. And I was like, no, you guys don't owe me anything. Cody forced me to send his assistant an invoice. He was like, if you don't send my assistant an invoice, I'm going to fucking tear you apart. Right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I'll send her. How much should I send? And he was like, bro, I don't know, $250. And I was like, that's a lot, bro. Oh man. So I was like afraid to charge at the beginning. I think most entrepreneurs are.
That is so funny.
Because like for me, it was like, wow, this is a blessing just having these people in here. I had no idea, mind you, before I get into the next part of that, Cody became like a really close friend of mine. And the guy put me on to so many people. The woman who's coming later tonight is huge. This woman is a multi-level marketing queen. She took over Miami by storm, and she's coming later tonight to talk business, not even to record. And like the connections have been unbelievable. And to think that it all started because it was like a vision that I had.
Yeah.
Right. And I think so many people are afraid, like we all have a vision, all of us. And if you say you don't, you're a fucking liar. Everybody has a vision, and it might not be strong enough yet, but that's because you haven't put enough time into it. And if you really sit there and you'd be like, what do I want? Well, it might be something grand, and you might be like, I have this huge vision, and it's like crazy, and like it's all I can think about. I become obsessed with it. Or it might be something like, oh, I've always had this like inclination that I wanted to pick up an instrument, or I always wanted to play the drums, or I always wanted to pick up a camera, but like it kind of freaks me out, so I never did it. Like you never know how just taking that action will change the trajectory of your entire life.
Yeah.
Because by renting this place out, man, I had no idea we'd be in the presence of so many great people. And now I don't even hang out with anybody that isn't on that level, because that's the level that I now operate at after 6 months of hearing nothing but incredible conversations.
Yeah.
And now I'm friends with half of these people, which has been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like you had a pretty crazy first episode with Wes. Like, I mean, for me, I think he's like the biggest fitness trainer. Like, I mean, he teaches other people how to have their own personal training business. He is the biggest guy. Dude. I think he has more cars than Andrew Tate. Like, you know what I mean?
No, Wes is great, bro. And Wes, I see him at the gym all the time, and I'm like, yo, what's up? And he's like, Big Drew, what's going on, bro? And dude, I love Wes. Say what you want about Wes. Wes is the man.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm all
no, not you, but like
yeah.
in general, he's getting a lot of heat, and I don't respect that because I think Wes is awesome. Wes has always shown love for the studio. He's always shown love for me. He's always shown love for the studio. He always refers his clients here, his students, his friends, like everybody he refers here. And so I'm super appreciative of that. But even since day one, man, he's always been like showing a lot of love, and we've benefited greatly as a result of that kindness.
Yeah, I mean, I really love hearing that, because I just feel like that's what we need a little bit more in this world. Like another example, I was late yesterday for my boxing session, so I only did 30 minutes, and he was the same. It's like, yeah, I just, it was $150 for an hour. He's like, yeah, just pay me $100 because it was only 30 minutes. I'm like, no, I went, grabbed some cash, gave him $160, you know what I mean? He didn't look, and then later on he texted me, oh, thanks, appreciate it. Dude, and it's just great to see that people are operating like that all the time, and they're like, huge. Man, life can be so easy if you're just around people like that.
Well, I think when you operate like that, you get that, right? So there's people, so we recently had a huge shoot here, and while I was behind the desk on the last episode with the guest, I'm texting the guy and I'm like, bro, I saw you got some crazy behind the scenes shots. Did you get any of me? And he's like, bro, I got tons. Like, I'm sending them over.
Yeah.
So he willingly just sends me these photos, doesn't ask for money. I'm like, bro, how much do I owe you? And he's like, nothing, bro. It's on the house. Like, they already paid me. But I still sent him a Zelle. I
Yeah.
still was like, hey, I'm sending you a Zelle. Boom, boom, boom. It's done. You
Yeah.
know? And if you operate in that way, always taking care of people, there's people that show love to me. Like our New Year's Eve party, I had 200 people here in the studio. It was
Sick.
huge.
Yeah.
We had a massive party here in the studio, and some of my videographers showed up that I've had here on set, and they showed up for free. They were like, yo, we're just going to shoot, like, we're going to shoot stuff for you. And after the event, I was like, yo, I'm sending you Zelle. And they were like, no, we told you it was on the house. I sent it anyways.
Yeah.
Because like you always want to take care of your people. Look at when we take care of others, it's crazy how God rewards us and takes care of us all the time.
Yeah, you're pretty spiritual about it. I always just feel like I want to make sure that I'm not a burden. So that the next time I ask them something, they're like, oh yeah, last time he paid me for nothing, so of course I'm doing it, you know what I mean? So for me, it's more like a transactional way of thinking.
I feel you.
But it's cool that you have that spiritual side. Like I could actually probably learn from that and think about it like that. It gives a little bit more of a positive vibe, you know what I mean? Like,
It's true, man.
But yeah, I mean, it's same end result, right? You take care of the people that help you as much as possible. So that's pretty cool. Now, you had a lot of guests. You've been doing this for 6 months now. Where do you see podcasting going in general? And what are you going to do with your studio? Because I think we talked a little bit off camera about like, you want to do more studios, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I guess just to say it plainly, this has been like a printing press.
Yeah.
Like, I've been in mortgages now for 10 years. I made a killing off of mortgages in 2020, 2021. 2022 was crazy. Even last year was decent, even with the rates, quadrupling overnight. But this doesn't feel like work. Like it's fun,
Yeah.
and it's making like crazily. This month we made as much as I made last month with mortgages, and so this has the opportunity to be a 7-figure business for sure. And all it needs is a little bit of operations.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm great with sales. I'm great with marketing. I'm great with branding. I'm great with, I don't do ads. It's all organic, but I'm great with networking. Where I slack most of the time is on operations and organization. So I'm hiring for somebody for that right now because I need to hire out and delegate in an area where I'm weak. Otherwise, we're not going to grow.
Yeah.
So my vision I'll answer the second part of your question first is I see us expanding into multiple studios. This is not going to be our only studio. We're going to have at least 5 or 6 of these, and then eventually we'll encompass them into one single place, which will most likely be a warehouse. It'll most likely be up the road in Wynwood. But I mean, I've seen it in the vision. It's already there, and like we're on the track to getting there. So the big part for me is I see the vision, right?
Yeah.
But the man I am today is not the man that's going to be running that. So I have to become the man that's going to be running a full production studio. Well, what does that mean? I mean, I need to learn more about leadership. I need to become a better leader because if I'm going to have a warehouse with 6 or 7 of these things, I'm going to have at least 20 employees, minimum, And then if I'm going to run 20 employees, I need to be a good leader. They're going to fucking leave otherwise, right? So I need to learn leadership, organizational leadership. I need to become a better man. Well, I can't be a good leader if I'm not taking care of myself. So I also need to upgrade every part of myself, whether it be in the gym, whether it be in my spiritual life, whether it be, all encompassing. I now have to step into that position. And so that's where my mindset is that if I become better, everything else around me does better, including my relationships, including my business, right? So that's kind of the trajectory, is that I want to become what I see in my vision. And the only way to do that is to just be better. So that's part 2. Part 1, where I see podcasting going. I for sure see podcasting being big. This is the new TV show. This is the new, maybe not reality, but it could potentially go in that direction.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of rumors lately from some big producers about how they believe that there's going to be a virtual component to this moving forward, probably within the next 5 to 10 years as AI really progresses. I can see big media conglomerates going out of business. I can see podcasting being the new big thing. I can see micro influencers taking over the space. People that have that trust and credibility with the audiences on a smaller scale being the ones that people go to for their news. Look at Patrick Bet-David out of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
He's crushing it. Everybody listens to Patrick Bet-David. Everybody wants to get their news through there because the guy, he spits it raw. He says it how it is. and he's less agreeable than most TV people that are just following a script.
For sure. And that vision sounds great. And you also have some great ideas of how that's going to look like in the studio. So I think you told me something about you wanting to be able to let them drive the car in.
Yeah.
And then do it in front of the...
Yeah, there's a million ideas,
just share
man.
some ideas that you have with us. Like, because everybody who's watching and listening might want to build their own podcast studio.
Yeah,
and
of
just
course.
Do something
I
epic,
mean,
so.
dude, there's so many ideas. My mind, I was listening to a Jordan Peterson podcast a couple of days ago, and he said so many people, they're visionaries and they're always getting ideas.
Yeah.
And they don't share them with anybody because they're afraid that someone's going to take the idea, right? And he said that's not the way to look at it, because if you limit yourself to sharing good ideas, you're going to stop getting good ideas. So he said if you could just give them out and get good at giving good ideas, then more will continue to happen. It's like working a muscle in your brain.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly getting stuff. My girlfriend says I overshare. So
let's go overshare here. That's why we're here.
But yeah, man. So some of the things where I was like, dude, this would be sick is imagine you built a structure where like somebody like Wes, for instance, the guy's got 20 exotics. And he's like, yo, I want to pull one or two of my exotics into the garage, into the warehouse. So I'll just pull them in, super secure. He comes in. It's like he doesn't have to go park on the street with a freaking Cullinan and walk in. It's like he just pulls it right into the studio, and then he does a podcast right in front of his Cullinan. You know, that's crazy, right?
Yeah,
Who's doing that? Or he does a podcast in front of the Ghost, right?
Yeah.
Having something live like that, and then, dude, I'm already thinking I could have a bunch of these lights. I could have the Nan lights all around the studio where they're just like bouncing colors off of the car. So it just looks so cool. You're getting all the colors spitting off of the car, off of the rims, right? It's parked in a particular way so that it just looks very creative. And so like there's so many different ideas, man. There's options where I think LED walls are not being used enough. I think, LED walls are very expensive right now. To build the LED set that I want, it's going to be $250,000. I already got pricing. But I'm like, dude, I could put you into a room and you could be anywhere in the world doing a podcast.
Yeah.
You could be here in Miami, but I could put you in Dubai.
Yeah.
That's the power of an LED wall. So you could have drone footage. You could have all types of footage where it's like I could pop it on the LED wall or in an LED cube. And now all of a sudden I just transported you. You're on top of the Eiffel Tower having a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities. I think I'm really, really excited to see how creative people get with the podcasting space, because the opportunities are endless, man. You could do so many different things. I could do a dozen different arrangements of the room to make it look completely different. I could make this place look like you're in a penthouse in New York City, or I could make it look all white and you feel like you're in Miami Vice, right? There's so many things that you could do when it comes to lighting, when it comes to plants, when it comes to, different set build outs, and this stuff's all super creative and it's fun. And I just started doing this, 6 months ago. So there's a lot that I don't even know yet, but I'm going to be uncovering a lot of it.
The only thing that worries me a little bit is what the fake gurus are going to do with all that stuff. Because now, out of nowhere, there can be some guy in a basement recording a podcast here, and then he pretends that he has like 5 cars and he's in Paris, drinking his Dom and like doing all this stuff. But I guess that's going to be another thing that's going to develop, spotting the fakie.
Dude, I'm getting that right now. I've been open for 6 months.
Yeah.
There are people in my building that have copied my set identically. Identically. I hired... Quick story, not a tangent. I'll try not to make it a tangent. But so I hired this guy. He's a videographer, and I'm like, hey, I need your help. I don't do editing, so I need some help with the edits and stuff. And so the guy comes in. He's pretending he's my friend. We're all buddy. He's gonna help me out so I could like get my edits done. Dude comes in here, takes pictures of everything in the space. He tells me, oh, my credit is really shitty. I really love this building. I've been wanting to live in here. Could you help me out? Do you know anybody? And I'm like, yeah, bro, I know everybody here. I call the property manager. I'm like, hey, my friend, he's got like really shitty credit. Can you hook him up? Can you get him a place in the building? And he's like, yeah, no problem. Send him down. I'll take care of him. So I get this guy into my own building. I paid him to do my edits. My edits are 2 months late. Do you know why that is?
Because he set up a fucking
Because
studio.
he spent 2 fucking months building the identical set downstairs in a unit that I helped him get into, right? So I not only helped him get in the building, I paid him to go buy the shit to replicate my set, and then instead of delivering my shit, he goes and replicates my whole set.
Yeah.
And so I was so upset, and I was just like, bro, you got to be kidding me. I let this guy into my home, and he replicates my spot, and I felt like just super burned, bro. I was just like, this is crazy that people have the audacity to do this. And so when I confronted him about it, the dude was like, oh no, it was my girlfriend. It was her idea. And like she went, and I was like, bro, the thing I hate the worst is like, if you're a man and you blame your girlfriend and you can't take responsibility, that is the most feminine trait that you could possibly have, to blame your girlfriend and not take responsibility for your actions.
That is so crazy.
So I'm just like, you know what? Just give me my shit and we're done. I don't want to have any relationship with you whatsoever. And so I cut the guy off. And it's been interesting to see this because he replicated the set, but he doesn't have any of the people that I have, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes back to network. To go back to the copycats and the fakes, you could be a fake and you could be a copycat, but if you don't have the genuine faith and belief in yourself and the connections and the ability to meet with other people, and you have a genuine heart, people are going to see through that, and people are not going to want to work with you.
Yeah, in the physical space, yes, but with the online guru space, I see some people getting away with it. So I'm a little bit worried about how that's going to develop. I mean, it's already happening a little bit with like the OnlyFans AI models and all that kind of stuff. It just becomes so easy to kind of fake something that there's for sure people who are going to.
So what would your advice be on how to like mitigate that?
I don't know. I'm asking because I thought maybe you had a funny story of some guy who, you know, like seemed like a fake guru pretending that he had his own podcast or something.
No, I mean, I have guys that come in here sometimes, and I'll be honest, man, I don't attract a lot of that.
The energy is not offered.
No, because like if you're fake, besides that one person that came in and like replicated my set, like if you're fake, like, bro, I don't want you in here, you know? And so I've had some people come in here and they'll be like, you know, it's so easy for me to spot now. Like if you have 1.4 million followers on your Instagram, but your average video gets 150 likes, bro, there is some huge disparity there in your numbers. Like something is not adding up. And then if I go to your view count and your average video is getting 4,000 views, but you have 1.4 million followers, that does not add up to me. So I'm like, it's easy to spot. You know, you paid for your verification, you bought followers, and your engagement is incredibly low because you got shadow banned for it. And so they're going to come on here and they're going to record an episode and they're going to post on YouTube and it's going to get 200 views, right? And the reason why is because it's not real. And so I think people just need to start doing more due diligence and they need to like pay a little bit more attention. The easiest way that I would say to really kind of spot some of that stuff is to do your homework when you look into their analytics, number one. And then number two, are they getting good guests? Do they actually have real people with real stories? Because in a longer form podcast, you could kind of put the pieces together and be like, oh, that doesn't add up with what he just said 10 minutes earlier, right? It's easy on a reel for you to believe somebody says that they're a guru, right? And they're in front of a Lambo. But then you realize after hearing them talk for an hour that might not be the case because maybe they're driving something else.
Yeah. I mean, that's also why I love podcasts, because it's hard to be a fake person for more than 30 minutes, an hour, especially if someone else is asking you the questions. And you're not really in control, although you could fabricate that, of course. But
but you can only do that so long, man. Like it all catches up to you.
Yeah.
It all catches up to you.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. I think we have gone over a lot of podcast stuff. Now, I am also curious, because I didn't really get even your story myself. Like, how did you get into the podcast, like starting your own podcast, right? Like, let's
Well, you mentioned the spiritual side. Do you want me to get into that?
It's up to you. Like, it's your podcast. So I think we have given the viewers a lot of info that they can work with. So if they want to stick around and listen to how you started your podcast and what was the idea, because that can be quite inspirational. And I think
for sure, man. So I initially got the idea for my podcast it was really a vision, right? I was doing some breath work. I do breath work often, and it's not like any woo-woo shit. It's like there's an app. It's called Pause. You could do 3 minutes of breath work, and it kind of resets your day from a biological perspective. So it's very similar to like cold plunges and things. And when I do any of that stuff, I usually kind of it clears my mind so much that I feel like I get vision. And for me, that comes in the form of connecting with God. It also happens when I like play worship music, or if I'm like I just wake up in the morning and I feel grateful. I just feel that divine connection. And I happened to see this vision where I was like, I saw this full concrete space and I saw plants all over the place. And I was just like, what is this space? It looks sick. I was living in like this, every single place in Miami, for the most part, is identical. It's like white floors, white walls, white countertops, like everything's white, 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 white. It's everywhere. It's the typical like porcelain look.
Yeah.
And so I saw this rustic, like New York, Chicago style loft, and it was covered in plants. And I'm like, this place looks beautiful. And I saw all this camera equipment. And so I made the assumption that I was to start my own podcast, which I think I was, but I had no idea it would lead to this. And oftentimes we get a vision and we can't see the whole thing. And that's why it's so important for me. I learned last year, when you get a vision, the most important thing you can do is to act immediately. Because if you'll act immediately, things will unfold in a completely different way. Things will unfold in ways that you had never imagined, in better ways, in ways that you couldn't have predicted or planned. And so I immediately started taking action. And I did that I came to the gym right downstairs, elevation. And when I come out of the gym, I had been thinking about this little vision all morning. And when I come out of the gym, I look up and I see the lofts here. And I'm like, I've been in these lofts before. I remember that they're kind of concrete vibes. And so I come in the building and I ask the lady, like, hey, do you have any units available? And she's super frantic. She's like, oh my God, come with me. I have so many available. So what happened was the building had just gotten sold, or it was in the process of being sold, and they were about to close on it. And she was like, we had to kick out. This used to be mainly businesses. It was like hair salons, nail salons, lash studios, etc. They had to kick all these people out because of some insurance situation in the process of their sale. They had to let them all go. And she was like, we have to fill this place to like at least 85% occupancy before we can seal the deal. So it was basically like name your price. So she took me to this studio. I call it a studio, but she took me to this loft unit 2 doors down. And it was really small, man. It was like from you and I to that wall. It was like 800 square feet, or maybe 750. And so she was just like, this is what we have, basically name your price. And I was like, well, this is what I'm paying right now. I'll pay you this. And it was substantially less than what she was offering. And she was like, I don't know, that's like really low. And I was like, you said his name your price. Like, I could do this. Can you make it happen? And then she was like, I don't think we could do that, but I'll call the owners. So I was like, all right, well, if it's meant to be, like, it is what it is. Yeah. So I left. She calls me like 15 minutes later when I get home, and she was like, hey, if you could leave two security deposits, we'll match. We'll do that. And I was like, all right, fine. So I come and sign, and I was like, I can move in 2 months, because I still have my lease that I got to get out of. And she was like, yeah, that's fine. Just sign now. Like, we just got to show that the place is
getting rented.
It's rented. Yeah. So I signed. I pay the 2 deposits. I finish out my lease, and every day I'm in my apartment, in the old apartment, and I'm thinking about equipment, and I started buying shit, and I was like, I'm going to make this into a sick ass studio. Yeah. And so I just started buying cameras, tripods, microphones, like stands. I had no idea what I was doing, bro. I just started buying shit. And
like
so,
a savage.
Like, I'm like, I got $10,000 worth of shit sitting in my apartment. And so the day that I move in, I built the whole set. Because I was like, that was the purpose of why I bought the spot. Because I was like, I'm going to build a studio and I'm going to film out of here. Yeah. And so we started filming. Like I said, my first guest was a former NBA, NFL player.
So that was not here, but
that was in the old studio. It was really small. And then after we had done it a couple of times, I started building out the set. I got all the furniture and different things. And the place was so tight. It was so cramped. And one of the other things that I do every month is I host a men's group. So part of it was like, I saw the vision of the studio, but I also saw a vision of like a whole bunch of men gathering. Yeah. So I opened up the space for men that perhaps were going through something tough in their life, where they just wanted accountability, so that we could get together and have an open space to talk. Because most men don't talk about their problems. They sit in like quiet desperation. There's a quote, something to the sort, where it's like, men just sit here and they will suffer in silence, rather than talk about the shit that they're going through, whether it be an abusive relationship, whether it be, a problem at home, whether it be something they're dealing with mentally. Nobody wants to talk about a fucking thing. They think it's like not cool. Yeah. And I wanted to create an open spot where men could really talk about those things. And so we had men come through that were talking about their divorce. We had men come through that were talking about cheating on their wives. We had men come through that were talking about how their kids are like pieces of shit and they're not behaving and there's problems. And I'm like, dude, it has nothing to do with the kid. Like, maybe it has something to do with you. Why don't you step up, And when we confronted these truths, and we allowed people to see like, well, maybe I do need to get better. It was cool because we started to build a tribe of men who were like willing to doing the work.
Yeah.
They were willing to get better and progress and hold each other accountable. We all have a word of the year. We go over it every month. And so what happened is the place got so freaking full. I had like 20, 30 guys coming through every month. And then I had podcast people coming in every day that I was just like, I got to get a bigger space. The day I said that, this place opened up. And so I went downstairs and I'm like, hey, how much is this renting for? And they told me the price. And I'm like, damn, bro, that's expensive. I was like, that's like 3 times what I'm paying right now. And then he was just like, well, it is what it is. And I'm like, can y'all do anything on the price? He's like, no, there's no way. So I walk in this place, bare empty. And I come in here and I prayed and I was like, God, do you want me to have this space? I was like, is this the next step? And I get like chills, bro. Like my hair stands up and I was just like, all right, that's the one. So I go down and I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. I signed the lease. 2 hours later, I get a phone call and it's a leasing agent. And he's like, hey, by the way, we got somebody else that really wants that unit and they're willing to pay you $5,000 if you'll get out of the lease. And I was like, no, I'm not getting out of that lease. I was like, God told me that's my spot, you know? Yeah. And then he was just like, are you sure you're going to turn down $5,000? I'm like, nah, bro, like I'm not doing that. And so, I was like, it's meant for me. And then he was like, okay, I'll call you back. He calls me right back. He says, what about $7,000? And I was like, bro, I'm not doing it. Right. And then he calls me back again and he's like, what about $8,000? And I was just like, bro, I just told you I'm not doing it. And then so I hung up with the guy. I said, you know what? I'll call you back. I hung up with him and I prayed on it. And I was like, what should I do here? I was like, all right, I'll tell you what, if this guy offers me $10,000, I'll give up the unit. This is what I prayed. I was like, God, if the dude offers me 10K, I'll give it up. If he offers me $1 less than $10,000, I'm not going to give it up. And so the dude, he calls, or I call him back and I told him, I was like, yo, I talked to God. And this guy, he must be like, this guy's an idiot. Like, what's wrong with him? Yeah. And I was like, if he gives me 10K, I'll give him the unit. And I was like, if it's $1 less, just don't bother calling me back. And then so he was like, wow, that's pretty bold. He was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm dead serious. So he calls me back and he's like, I know you told me not to call you back, but he's willing to offer you $9,900. And I was just like,
I don't like this guy.
Yeah, right? And I was like, did you tell him about the 10K? And he was like, yeah, they said that they're not going to give 10K. And I was like, all right, cool, that's mine. And the guy was like, what is wrong with you? Why would you turn that down? And I was just like, dude, I told you already, this is my spot, you know? And I was so confident in it. And I tested it, and then I decided to keep it. And so I think that was inspiring for him because when I moved in, I started building the whole set out. And like our first week here with the men's group, we had like 35 guys, and everybody was comfortable because we had a ton of room. My first guest in the new space was Theo Vaughn. Like, it was crazy to have, it was just positive confirmation that I was doing the right thing, that I was on the right path. And so like every single thing since then has been positive trajectory. The men's group keeps growing. The relationships get deeper with the guys. The conversations get deeper. The guests keep getting bigger. And, you know, I go into that. I know that was kind of a long tangent, but I go into that story to say, like, if you have a vision, you have to be so confident about it that you're not willing to take anything that is unrelated to that vision or that goes against that vision, right? And so if you can go about it with faith, man, you never know what might happen. I never imagined that I would be sitting here with the people that I'm sitting with. I never imagined that I'd have millionaires and billionaires and huge A-list celebrities in the space. But that all happened because God gave me a vision. I said yes. I took action. I turned down opportunities that went against that.
9,900.
That's crazy. Who could make that up? 9,900. That's wild, bro.
Yeah.
You're not gonna give up $100?
Yeah,
that's
I was
fucking
like,
crazy.
I don't understand this guy's
that's
brain
crazy.
at all. Yeah. I don't get this.
So they ended up running something on the 8th floor. I hope they're enjoying it.
All right, beautiful, man. I think this is a great way to end the interview. You know, man. If people want to find you, how can they find you?
So you can find me personally at Drew's The Move on Instagram. If you want to check out the space, it is themove.miami. And you can check us out online at www.themovemiami.com.
Yeah, beautiful website. Bunch of good testimonials, so I can only recommend it. Thanks for having me, and maybe until the next time.